Welcome to this week's Haunted Hour podcast. This week, I have a real treat for you. I sat down with Cardsy B, author of the Saturn Diaries, and we talk everything spiritual. And it was a wonderful conversation. And let's get right into the episode. Yesterday, I lost my job. Yesterday, I'm in a bar. Being broke, it really sucks. And the rent's just too damn much. Okay, so I'm really excited to have you here because I've been following your daily readings on Instagram. I've been listening to your podcast I've been listening to it on Spotify, Hex in the City, which I love the name. And so it brought up all these questions to me that I have for you. But first, just in case somebody doesn't know what you do or who you are, I wanted you to tell a little bit about yourself, and then I'll get into my questions.
Yeah, totally. So I am Cardsy B. I'm an intuitive tarot reader. I am the host of the Hex in the City podcast and the author of the Saturn Diaries, a modern day grimoire. So most of my background is in tarot and astrology and numerology, and I do one-on-one sessions, readings, and intuitive coaching with clients.
I didn't even know you did numerology. So that's really exciting to me because I just recently got a book and it's called Angel Numbers. And I don't actually know the difference between, like, say, an angel number and some other kind of a number, but I use it like I get numbers in dreams because my big thing is dream interpretation. So I get numbers in dreams and I look them up in the book and they fit. Like, I'm not making it fit. It literally seems to fit. And so that is fascinating to me. And have you talked about the numbers? Am I just not catching on to
Yeah,
that?
you know what? No, it's interesting that you say that because absolutely, and I think people talk a lot about angel numbers in terms of seeing repeat numbers. With numerology, like my lens, I learned tarot like first. That was something that I picked up as a child and kind of have developed throughout my adult years. So everything through me that I kind of work in is like tarot is almost like my major or like my foundation. So I work with numerology through tarot constellations, but it's interesting because even when I work with that, and then if someone else has a background in like astrological numerology or angel numbers, they all kind of do mean the same thing essentially. So
Okay.
like ones are new beginnings. I think this is like an easy example because everyone always is like 111 when they see that, and like that's an angel number and it's like new beginnings, new things coming in. And in the tarot, the one is the magician, so it's the start of the hero's journey. So a lot of the way that I work with numerology is how the cards numbers come up in readings, and I'll see is that amount of days, months, weeks that things are coming through. Is it significant in terms of numbers? Like you're saying with some clients, I'm like, hey, look out for this number. And when you see this, pay attention to the questions you're asking yourself or thinking in your mind, and there's answers coming through. So I think that at the core, numerology all has, like, to me, it's like from like other practitioners that I've worked with and that I know, we all kind of are like, oh yeah, it means the same essentially, of like the ones, the twos, the numbers all have like the core meaning. But I look at it with kind of like a tarot lens.
Okay. Oh, I love that. That gives me a whole new way of like kind of looking at the numbers as well, because I only started reading tarot. And I'm going to tell you right now, when I read tarot, I'm still looking at the book, but I'm just recently paying attention to looking, like focusing on what's in the picture and what does it mean to you first, because that would be your intuitive reading versus like reading from the book. Like, how do you feel about, like, if somebody's just starting to read tarot, should they start off with the book or should they start off intuitively?
Yeah, I definitely feel intuitively, and that's a great way. Like what I always recommend is even if you just pull a card a day for yourself, and like what is the first thing that comes up when you see it? And then it's great to look into the guidebook. And a lot of times it's kind of like what you're saying, when you look up numbers in your dreams, you're like, oh wow, that's spot on. So I think if we kind of tap into our intuition first of what's coming up in the imagery or the number of the card or colors in the card, and then looking up what the meaning is and how that kind of correlates is a really powerful way to learn both the kind of archetypes of the tarot, but also trust our intuition and what's coming up when we pull cards.
Right. Kind of like it's our first, the intuition is telling us what we really need to be thinking about versus what a general thing could be. Okay. So when you do the daily readings on Instagram, I've resonated with a lot of them. I feel like it does flow with things that are happening in my life. Like I do get a lot out of it. So did you start that like just for yourself to do your daily reading and you put it online, or how did that come about?
Well, you know what's interesting is that I always do that. Like I always pull a card of the day for myself. Yeah, that's how it's like I start that as my morning routine. And then a friend of mine who is also in kind of like the wellness and spirituality space was saying, he's like, you know, you really need to record these, because I would talk to him about it and he's like, oh, that's coming up for me too. So now I do it with the intention of like, what does the collective need to know? And anyone that's, you know, seeing this reading in their feed, anyone that's coming across it, it's like obviously we're all resonating with the information coming through. So now I definitely do it with the intention of a collective pull. But yeah, it started just from my daily practice.
Okay. I love that because I feel like, and like I said, I don't know a lot about it, but I feel like there is a difference between reading for ourselves and then reading for even another person. Or like I feel like your intent, you know, like when we fool around on our podcast and we like pull cards for people on the Paranormally Blonde, we will mention the person's name and have them in mind. Like, is it that simple just to like direct that this is
Yeah.
from?
Yeah, I think I love, yeah, and I love how you guys do that. I think it's like really kind of claiming the intention of like, for me now when I pull, instead of just it being for myself, I'm like, what is the collective, anyone that's coming across this information, what is it that we need to know for our, you know, most like our highest self to receive, to have a helpful, healing and empowering experience today. So that's really how I go into it, is kind of like a short prayer meditation beforehand, and then like the claiming the intention for the collective rather than just for myself.
I love that. Okay. So let's see. I've got a couple of questions. I can remember my own questions, so I have them all typed out. And I worked on them. I kept like editing them, and then I would get a new idea. So this is like over
Oh,
a
I
couple of
love
days.
amazing.
So I put okay. So okay, we're getting towards the end of the year, and so I myself, and I work ahead, I guess, because I'm already like in New Year's mode. So I'm already setting my intentions and executing them now because that's just me. I like, I'm a planner and I like things to
Mhm.
be organized because I'm kind of scattered. So I need that, you know, thing to ground me because I'm a Gemini. So I think that's what's wrong with me. I'm a Gemini. So the I call it like my reset button. So you've been talking on your podcast about like these retrogrades that are coming up and how that will affect us and everything. So, but that doesn't happen every year, right? So is it different every year?
So we usually have three times, sometimes four Mercury retrogrades in a calendar year. And this year, it just is happening that it's at the tail end of the year, which is always, you know, I was saying, I think it's like it's on an optimistic front. It's like we get that and the holidays all at the same time, because the holidays can, on a 3D human level, like slow us down. People go into vacation mode. It's hard to get like business deals done. It's hard for people that are, you know, out there seeking employment. Like getting a new job on the holidays is always like, oh, wait till January, things are kind of slow. So I always say like the upside of getting the retrogrades over with that is then we're like already in full steam ahead going into the new year, because we technically exit out of Mercury retrograde on January 1st. So it's like, okay, cool, we're all ready to rock. Um, the downside is obviously a lot of people traveling, being in situations with family members that maybe we don't see all the time, maybe people that like trigger us more than we would like in a Mercury retrograde is a little bit more spicy, a little bit more challenging. So no, it doesn't always hit at this time every year. So there's definitely like pros and cons to when it's occurring at this point.
Okay, so that kind of, because this is all new to me. So, and you're the first person that like I've seen other people do this and talk about it and stuff, but you are the first person in my life who's ever like spoke about these things and it like made sense to me and interested me, you know, because
Oh,
usually
thank
I'll hear
you.
things and I'll be like, you know, but whatever it is that it just speaks to me and it makes sense. Um, so then what you're saying is that every year is different. I can't like know something now because next year it'll be completely different.
Yeah, I would have to look at the calendar for 24, but I believe it hits earlier. It might be November, October, November next year that we're going to be experiencing it. But yeah, with this holiday season, and I also like one of the things I don't love about especially Mercury retrograde is all of the like fear kind of astrology memes of like, oh my gosh, everything's going to be terrible. And it's like
Yeah.
there are good and bad side. Like there's light and shadow and everything. And it's like there's good and bad with Mercury retrograde. So the first part of this, which is we're already in like what they call the pre-shadow period, it officially goes retrograde on the 13th of December. But from the 13th to the 23rd, it's retrograde in Capricorn. And Capricorn it's kind of like the workhorse of the zodiac. If you know any Capricorns, they're usually like serious about success. They're getting things done. They're very grounded, very organized. And it's kind of because of the retrograde in Capricorn, it's allowing us to go back in work matters. So it can allow us to close loops. Things that maybe didn't come to fruition can actually, in this Mercury retrograde, it can be an advantageous time to get those clients, sign those deals, loop back around to old opportunities in the realm of work and money. So that's where I'm like, it's more complex than just like, oh, Mercury retrograde, our appliances aren't going to work and like communication's going to be terrible. It's like, we really have to look at when it's occurring, where in the skies, like in what constellation and what sign it's occurring in. And so this time it's kind of like, I'm like, we have a little sweet spot between now and the 23rd to actually kind of close old loops from the year and work and money related things. And then from the 23rd to the 1st, it's in Sagittarius, which is basically like, don't go into the shadow side of Sagittarius and be too spicy, be too blunt at a holiday party, have one too many cocktails, and then tell your relative what you really think. Like, watch out for those moments at the end of December. Yeah.
That would be a disaster.
Yeah,
That'll make a whole
totally.
new year, won't it? Oh, God. Let's see. Oh, yeah, there was something that came up in your podcast, and again, forgive me that I don't know the answer to this, but what exactly does a shadow period mean?
So that's kind of when the planet is like preparing to go retrograde, to go backwards through. The planet itself doesn't like spin backwards. It's like moving like from Capricorn to Sagittarius versus the other way. So it kind of it's preparing, it's slowing down its orbit. And when we start to feel that slowdown, we're like, it's almost like a record scratch of like, okay, like things may feel a little more complex in terms of communication. I just got the new iPhone 15 and I was like, oh, I have to get it before this starts to slow down. So we start to feel a little bit of like a slow before the redirection. So I include shadow periods into like predictive astrology and predictive readings, because it's like counting that in gives you a little bit of a buffer of like, it's always good to do things either before the shadow period or after the shadow period has ended, when it's completed its cycle.
Okay. Well, that makes sense. Okay. I have a question. We've been talking about AI a lot, and so I don't know if they have it. I mean, I know they do have it in tarot because there's an app called Deckable. And it's basically, so now it's just on your phone and it flips the tarot card. So there's no real physical touch with the cards, and you get readings that way. And so that's one example I know of AI. I guess it's AI. It's computer generated. But AI is like everywhere. So, I mean, what are your thoughts on that, like in the spiritual world? Because I feel like you need humans for
Yeah.
that, right?
Oh, I mean, I totally agree with you on that point. And it's interesting because I had been approached by a company that was like, they're like, oh, you have a big following. We want to work with you. And it was AI based. And they were trying to
Mhm.
work with me on that. And I just said, really, thank you so much. But like everything down to every post I write is like generated by me. Even if you DM me, I will like, sometimes it's not immediate, but I always answer my DMs myself. And I think as a writer and as like an intuitive, like psychic tarot reader, that's just something that's so part of my soul essence that I'm kind of like, I know I want that to be in my voice and an extension of coming directly through me. But I also feel on the flip side that like, it's something it's coming into our lifetime, it's coming into our experience the same way that the internet did back in the 90s, and people were fearful of it and like, what does this mean? So I think there's a way to coexist without it necessarily kind of invading our work in a way that takes away from the soul essence of it. So for me, I know that like I'm always going to write everything myself as a writer, and I know that I'm always going to like perform all of my own readings. Now, if there are ways that it can, for example, help with my website, prompts on my website that are not necessarily divination or writing from a creative place, absolutely. And I do want to be able to coexist with the development of it. But I do think that like there's going to be a whole other movement. Like, this is a prediction for me that it's going to be a whole made by humans movement. So whether that's like on books, that there's going to be like a certification of like written by a human, or on artwork like made by humans, because I think we're going to very quickly be able to discern the difference of the two and kind of crave that like soul essence of being created by a human. And I keep saying I'm so grateful that my book was published. It was December of 22. And I'm like, that it was before ChatGPT, before any of the AI was in the mainstream. I'm like, I
Yeah.
really freaking wrote that book, like
Yeah.
it was like made by a human. But I think that that's going to be a whole movement too, because I think as we're just inundated with more AI generated artwork, writing, content, we're going to be like, no, I want the real thing. And is there a way that they're going to start like certifying that, or saying, like putting the way that there's non-GMO objects and or organic
Right.
foods, like is it going to be made by humans in the world of like creation and art? I think so.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. I love that. And I think they will look for that because I mean, I think AI has a place in helping us in certain ways, but creativity, that's like the essence of humans, right? Is that we
Yeah.
can share stories and create things out of our mind, out of our dreams, wherever, that we're like connected to the universe, and AI can never connect to whatever it is that we're actually connected to. So, yeah. I mean, I have fun playing with it, but I wouldn't want
Yeah.
to like put out an entire book and put my name to it.
Right.
And it's actually written by, I mean, something else, really. That's not the same thing. Like I have in my blog, I've been taking my dreams and throwing them into the chat GPT and creating short stories, and I'll go in and kind of edit it out to but it's for
Yeah.
fun. It's
Right.
not
Right.
I'm not selling it. you know.
Yeah.
So, and it kind of helps me see what like it does. I give it different themes each time. So it's kind of teaching me. I'm trying to learn from AI. I feel like it's kind of educating me a little bit.
That's cool. Yeah, and
So,
that's the thing is I've played with it for like prompts on my website and like that sort of like, like business formatting and things. And I agree because I was like, oh, I want to understand this and not be like almost like adversarial with seeing it as an enemy.
yeah.
And I do think there's a lot that it can expedite and streamline in a lot of our day to day, 100%. But I do think certain things that come from like our soul essence and our connection to the universe, to source, absolutely there's going to be an element of kind of preserving the soul essence of that work, and that includes very much like readings and divination.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. You talk a lot about manifesting versus manifesting. So, my question was, so manifesting versus manifesting, how to tell when you should let things go. So, like, how do you know if you're manifesting or if you're just being impatient and you're still manifesting?
Yeah, oh, that's such a good question. I think it's one that like I struggle with all the time because I think that yeah, it's kind of a term that I coined from being an impatient Sagittarius and from being someone who was very good at like chasing and getting. It's like the Sagittarius is, it's like the archer with the bow and arrow, and I was very good throughout my career. Even in partners that I dated in the past, I was like eyes on the prize, I'm getting that, and it came to fruition. The danger with manifesting is you can often get it and then realize like, oh, I don't know if this was for my highest good. Like maybe I shouldn't have chased so hard. Maybe I shouldn't have forced this to come,
Yeah.
to come to me. And I think that the difference is when it's really, really hard and you're getting a lot of signs of like, no, a lot of doors closing consistently on whether that's one job opportunity, on like a partner that you're trying to pursue. Take the signs from your higher self, from the universe, because there should be a relative state of flow. Like delays, like you're saying, is it just impatience and there's delays, especially in times like a Mercury retrograde where we're like, we could experience like longer delays than normal. I think it's coming back to tapping into our inner guidance system and our intuition of, does this really feel like something that I believe is for me, that is going to serve me and serve my purpose? Do I really believe that I'm worthy to receive this right now? And I think if we can feel yeses to all of that, maybe give it some more time, but without action at that point. Like, let's see if it comes back to me. Let's see if that person does reach back out or that job opportunity does respond. I mean, when I say I was like a notorious manifestor, I was the one that was like, just checking, just following up again, just checking. Hold on, I have some more information that I can send you if that's going to help you with this, like to make the decision to choose me. And I think that that's where I've learned to like, when I start to go into that place, like pause a minute, like, and then if it's still radio silence, do I feel that this is the best way forward? Do I feel like it's actually in alignment, or is it my ego just chasing to kind of get the like, oh, I achieved that thing, or I connected with that opportunity?
Yeah. Oh, that makes sense. Um, my son is really good with manifesting, and he's an Aquarius. and he
Nice.
sets his mind on something and he always gets his way. And I find it fascinating. Or is that something that Aquariuses are known for?
I feel like and Aquarians are better at going with the flow. They're an air sign. They're kind of like they're known as kind of like the rebels, the innovators of the zodiac. And I feel like Aquarians definitely are good at like, especially if he's like, okay, I'm gonna like put the goal out there and release and receive. That is truly the like definition of manifesting. It's kind of like put it out there, let it flow to you. Like I'm much more of like I put it out there and then it's like it's almost like manifesting is harassing the delivery person. Like you just ordered it on Amazon and then you're checking Amazon and then you're emailing Amazon. Are you sure it's coming? Are you sure it's coming? Like, I don't know. I don't know. It's like just hit the order button and receive. And I think that Aquarians are notoriously or famously, I should say, not even notoriously, like are famously good at that because they're really good at kind of like setting it out there and then going with the flow. So that's awesome that he's a master of that. I love that.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, because he does. He just kind of like, and I feel like it's because he believes it. He
Yes.
says it and he believes it. Because I'll sit there and tell him, like, I'll be the one. I'll be like, no, that's not, going to happen, or that's not possible. And other people will tell him. An example would be he had a friend in school and they moved to Mexico, and like, so they're gone, right? And he's like, she's coming back. She's going to be in the school, and like a year goes by, and he's still talking about it. And everybody's like, nope, not going to happen. And one day he came home and he said, she's back. And I'm like, what? How do you know that? How did that happen? So I don't put anything past him now. As a matter of
Oh,
fact, when we
that's
bought our
amazing.
house, I wanted to buy a different house. And this is the one that he wanted because this is the one that we've rented since he was a child. And so when it came up for sale, he's like, I want this one. And so, and I should mention he's autistic. So he's not inhibited by outside like things coming in,
Yeah.
right? And so I kept looking at other houses and he kept saying he wanted this one. I'm trying to manifest while he's trying to manifest. We're manifesting against each other and I lost.
That's
I was like, okay.
amazing. It feels like he's really intuitive though too. Like I think it's the combination of being a strong manifester with the ability to like tap in intuitively. Like he kind of does know and can see the future timelines of like, oh, the probability of that timeline occurring actually is quite high. And like being able to then like focus on that and receive it is that's a beautiful gift. That's incredible.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. I've learned after that, I'm like, I'm gonna listen to what he says because he's on to things. I already asked that. Uh Oh, okay. I had a question. Are there times like I notice sometimes like there's times on the internet where everybody seems to be in drama and in an uproar? Is that because of like people just don't even realize that there's a certain time that maybe they should be spending less time on the internet, or like is that driven, driving people?
I mean, I believe there's so many things definitely that influence the collective in that way. And one of them are like very much, I believe, astrological transits. Other factors that kind of coincide with that, like recently we've had a lot of spikes in the Schumann resonance. And the Schumann resonance, like, is for anyone who's like watching or listening and not familiar, it's basically the measurement of like the Earth's heartbeat and frequency. So in hertz, like what the frequency of Earth is normally. And I think it's around like 76, and recently there's been massive spikes. So when
Oh,
we feel that, it's kind of we're all impacted by that frequency rise. And even though a rise in frequency can be a good thing, it can be more light hitting the earth plane, things like solar flares kind of hitting the earth, and we're
mhm.
like jolted by more light. It also can cause a little bit of a feeling of off balance. So that can make more people, like when you're saying just getting like, very reactive online or on social media, it can generate anxiety in certain people. It can also generate like lethargy of like the need to like sleep and recover in others. So when we look at factors all across the board, from astrology to Schumann resonance spikes to solar flares, there are times where it's definitely the same way that like full moons impact us. Like I'm
Yeah.
sure that like you've heard that from people even in science that are like doctors. I remember my veterinarian was like, oh my gosh, that's when like it's the craziest, when there's like crazy animal things happening as full moons. It's like we definitely see our energy field, our physical and like energetic bodies being impacted by these things that are happening cosmically. And yeah, one of the symptoms of that is definitely usually seeing like flare ups online of like either things that are fear inducing or people getting very reactive with one another in those times.
Huh, that's interesting. I'm gonna have to look up. So how would I, if I wanted to look up the Earth's frequencies, or like just a Google
Yeah,
search, or?
there's probably definitely websites for it. There's a couple of different Instagrams that I follow that will usually report daily. It's almost like a weather report. You can, yeah,
Oh,
so Instagram and TikTok, if you literally put in Schumann resonance, it's like SCHUMANN. It's after, I'm sure, like the scientist or the physicist that discovered it. I don't know, but it's Schumann resonance.
huh.
And you can follow like a bunch of different accounts on TikTok or Instagram, and they'll just kind of give you the daily read of like where it's at, if it's spiking, what's going on.
Oh wow, I'm totally gonna do that. That's good to know. I have never heard of that before.
Yeah, it's something
um,
that I started to look into the past couple of years, like just kind of even though it's not astrologically based, I would look at things. I'm like, oh, this is even crazy for this like a period we're going through astrologically. What else is going on? And it's something that I discovered and then have studied that ever since. And then it's like, oh, it usually makes sense. Even if I'm starting to feel physical symptoms like extreme lethargy or like head pressure and headaches that are not like, I'm like, this is out of the blue. What is it? And if I look up and like look at, I'm like, oh, there's been spikes or there's been massive solar flares the past 48 hours. It kind of makes you feel a little less crazy, you know?
yeah.
And also if you're seeing a lot of that like kind of like conflict or reactive behavior with others, you're like, okay, people are feeling a little on edge. It's understandable right now. Yeah.
Oh, that's what. Before I get up before I like do anything every morning, I need to check all these things. Maybe I just won't open the internet at all.
Totally, totally.
I want to talk a little bit too about magic, like setting, like intention magic. I guess it was. I know you had one in your book. I believe it was in your book that was for money manifestation. So, and like, so you have
Yeah.
recipes on, what you would need and like an easy way to do it. Do you set intentions often, in your life?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And I think that like coming like you when you're saying you're getting prepared early for the new year, like I think that wrapping up a year and going into a new one is a really good time to look into like what is it that we're focusing on? Is it abundance? Is it around opening to love in romantic relationships or friendships or more collaboration? And yeah, one of the things in my book, The Saturn Diaries, it's half memoir and half spell book. So it's called The Saturn Diaries, a modern day grimoire, because it's the true life story of me kind of going through a dark night of the soul that led me from being an executive in the fashion industry to coming back to my childhood love of tarot and now doing this as a full-time career. But at the end of each chapter is kind of a healing elixir or a spell or a ritual that came up through my journey that I use in an intentional manner to either call certain things in, release things depending on the time period. So yeah, one of them, I think there is an abundance spell in there. And one of the things I really love to work with is herbs and crystals. So just a really easy hack in the morning with like making your coffee or your tea. The herb cinnamon or the spice cinnamon, it heightens intuition as well as brings in prosperity. So I'll do just like a little dash of cinnamon in my latte in the morning and like stir it, because in Wiccan and witchcraft practices, stirring clockwise is calling in and counterclockwise is releasing. So I'll stir it 3 times with the intention of like calling in that prosperity and
Uh-huh.
opening up my intuition to receive it. So they're little simple kind of daily hacks in the book and recipes and rituals. And then some more like complex, if you want to do like full on spells, they come later in the book. The more that like I developed my practice and was kind of downloading more tools that were coming through to me. So yeah, there's a lot that we can work with, like even on a simple level in the day to day, and then going more into the involved rituals. And I think going into the new year, once we kind of define what it is that we're releasing with this old year and what we want to either call more in of or like start anew and really focus on, there's so many tools that we can use, even have in our daily house. To like cinnamon's just like a great simple hack for that, for example.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. I'm gonna definitely execute that, because that's something that I can easily do, and you don't even have to buy anything, like you said.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like sometimes it's like I think people always picture like me based on like my book and my like social media following, that I'm always doing these elaborate rituals. And sometimes I am. Like sometimes I'm like, okay, I'm gonna like get really intentional and spend a couple of hours like making moon water and having a ritual in a certain full moon. Other times I'm literally just like I'm on the go like everyone else, and I'm like I just have 3 seconds to add the cinnamon and like give it intention and focus in the moment. So I think there's many ways to work with it, and it doesn't have to be super expensive with a lot of tools, purchasing a lot of tools, or super time invasive if you're like a mom and you're on the go, or you have like, you're working multiple jobs. We can do this with like minimal expenses and tools that most of us already have in our house.
Right. And do you believe that like when you're setting an intention, whether it's for like the day, like do you do like for the day, for the week, for the month, for the year kind of thing too?
Yeah, I mean, I tend to have like overall things that I work with for the year. So this is, I think, again, it's a great time to have that. I'm so excited to be on. I love your podcast, and and I also love Paranormally Blonde, so I'm excited to be here. But I think it's a great time to like, on top of that, it's such a gift to me to be able to share this in this time, because with New Year's, I think it's what I usually do is I have an overarching theme for the year, and then things will come up like month to month. Or for example, if I'm going into a specific like collaboration or big work opportunity, then I'll have intentions around that or around that time period. But with going into a new year, one thing I do every year is I pull my cards for the wheel of the year. So like what the 12 months are going to look like. So that's a great just like circle spread of like the 12 cards for the month. And then I usually set an intention of like one or like 1 to 2 to 3 words of like, what is my word of the year? And I'll create a sigil, which is like a symbol in witchcraft around that word or combination of words. And then when I draw that on anything, like I'll draw it on the top of my like list for my to-do list for my business for the day. It's kind of invoking that the energy of that word. So some people will choose something like abundance. This year for me, it's surrender and fun, because I feel like I can be a bit of a control freak. I can be, as you said, I can be a manifestor. It's like in my book. So I'm trying to like really just surrender into what is meant for me. So surrender and fun, and have more fun with it. So those are really my words for 2024. And then I haven't done this yet, but I'll after I do my annual spread for the year, then I'll create a sigil, like a little symbol from those letters. And that way, anytime like I draw that on something or can just quickly sketch it before like starting my day, it's like invoking that of I want to like surrender into what's meant for me and surrender into the most fun and joyful experience for the day.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. And I can understand wanting to control things because even though I can be passive and let things just happen, ultimately I found just through doing dream analysis that what I truly desire or am is I could try to control things. And I think that's probably part of like forcing and all these things. They all come back to having control over a situation, which we rarely do. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
I mean, no matter how much you try to make something happen, it seems like it just things happen the way they do. And sometimes you just have to sit back. Like I had the last couple of months, I've sat back and just kind of observed things and talk to myself. It doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. What do you think about this? How does it make you feel? Is there something else that you'd rather do? Like those type of things. And
Mhm.
I only know how to tap in through dreams. I look at my dreams because I remember most of them, and the stuff that I say, like it keeps coming at me again and again. And then like I'll have a dream and then you'll say something and then another person will say something. And it's like, how many times do I have to hear this before I will listen to the universe? And when I feel like when I am in the flow with it and I am listening, that I feel more at peace and that things don't bother me. And the same things are happening, but for some reason I'm just like, this is fine because this is, where I intend to be, if that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and I love that. I love that you shared that like being in the observer mode, because I really think that that's where like surrender and the power of that flow comes in, is when we're able to like kind of hands off the wheel and be in observer mode. And it's so cool that your dreams show you so much, because even that like you are kind of in observer mode. Even when you're active in your dreams, you're like, okay, I'm able to like neutralize when I wake up and observe it. And I think that that's something that so many of us need to learn in the day to day. And that's definitely like an ongoing lesson and goal for myself, is to be able to step back and be in the observer and surrender as a result, because I believe that like we always have choice and free will, but like as you're saying, I think we kind of like my perspective is that we kind of all had a divine design in this lifetime that we like signed off on before we like tapped into this human experience. And so we're kind of always being guided towards that. And even when we
Yeah.
manifest, we have free will. So we can go away from that divine design and like manifest, but we're going to probably have somewhat of like a rude awakening to redirect us back, you know?
It's so true. I know.
Yeah.
That is 100% accurate because my whole life I like things come, things have hit me as a teenager that I like let go, and then it keeps coming back, and it's like I decided to take this really long path in a
Yes.
different direction. And I mean, sometimes I feel like maybe you can't really absorb the spiritual things that you need to absorb until you've gone through some bad
Yes.
stuff, because you're more aware of what, like, gratefulness. And I'm working on gratefulness too, that like people always think, oh, gratefulness, I'm happy that I have the things I have, and it's kind of like, like that. But I've learned that, like, my big pet peeve is doing dishes. I don't know why I hate doing dishes,
I
but I
hate that
do. I mean,
too. Yes, it's so funny.
I don't know what that is. I could fold laundry all day long. I can do other chores, but there's something about the dishes that just really make me mad. Like, I'll be mad. Like, how come I'm doing all the dishes here? Because I'm the woman? Like, I don't understand this. And so I'm sure there's some psychology behind that. But I started saying, when I saw the dishes, I never want to put on a podcast, which totally helps, because now you're with somebody and you're doing the dishes. And then I will sit there and I will say, I'm grateful that I am able to cook, that I know how to cook, that I had this substance that fulfilled me, and that I have these dishes to use, and that I have a home to put them in. And, just that simple act of like setting the intention of being grateful for just that one thing was so helpful to me to get it done. So now I'll look at it and I'll still be like, ugh, and I'll be like, nope, podcast time, and it
Yeah.
really helps. So
Oh, I love that. And I love that you kind of have been able to reframe it a bit too of like, oh, now I can look forward to like podcast time and like starting it with like a little list of gratitude and then going into it. I say that to clients all the time because I have a lot of clients that come to me that are in that cycle of like bad things keep happening. Why? And it's like not to bypass or dismiss that. Like, absolutely, it's okay to acknowledge and feel so much like empathy for yourself for the hardship that we've moved through. But I think that like reframing it with like, what are the things that you have accomplished? What can you give yourself credit for in that time? What are the good things, even small acts of kindness that have come into your world in that time? And when we
yeah.
have a little bit of time and space to give gratitude to that, 1,000%. Like, even when I wake up and I'm stressed and like there's things that aren't going right, I'm always like the little things I can find, like grateful for the snuggles for my dog when she wakes me up, grateful for my view of the water when I'm like, oh, it's beautiful that I can like look at the sunset over the water. And it does kind of just like raise the vibration a little bit, even when you're like not looking forward to something or in like a bit of a like a cranky moment. I feel the same way about dishes. So, and I agree with you that like podcasts are like, that's great, that's a great idea, because I'm the same way. I remember when I was married and my dishwasher broke at the time, and I was calling the super in my apartment building, and I was literally like, this is my best friend about the dishwasher. And my ex was like, well, you better tell Lisa, because my best friend in Toronto, his name is Lisa. She was like, how is Lisa going to feel that your best friend is the freaking dishwasher? And I was like, I'm sorry, the dishwasher actually is my bestie, because I'm like, that mitigates a little bit the dishwashing experience.
Yeah.
So I feel you on that. But I like the gratitude and podcast with that, and that kind of shifting the energy of doing that.
Yeah, especially because I'll like pretty much I'll save like a couple of podcasts that I really love to listen to. I will save it for dishes or cooking or something like that. And it
Yeah.
completely changed my perspective, which kind of leads me to, what about people? I'll run into people who are they're so burdened by negativity that they're so buried deep. And I've been there myself in the past,
Yeah.
that, like you said, everything's negative, and no matter what you say, like, they're not receptive to anything positive. Do you just kind of let them go, or what do you do?
I mean, a lot of, so this is a great question. And I think that it's funny because I just talked about this on my upcoming, because I pre-recorded my podcast because my mom's coming this coming weekend. And I just talked about this on my podcast because I feel like there's a lot of this energy in the world right now. And understandably so, we're experiencing like a lot of heaviness, a lot of darkness in areas on the world stage. But I've had a lot of clients recently across the board who are like in that cycle and like, but when, it's always like but when is it magically going to shift? And I always explain even things when I see things coming through in readings of like, I do see a new job opportunity, like 2, 3 months down the road, for example. And they're like, I can't wait 3 months. Like, I can't take any more of this. And it's like, the more we do that, the more we repel that away. And one thing I learned from my personal experience of when, I went from having like the very Carrie Bradshaw, like executive, like fashion career, like splashy New York, and like got a divorce, lost all my money. My best friend passed away of like HIV related complications. I mean, the list goes on. I won't even go through the whole list of it, but and ended up living basically in squalor on the other side of that after having this big like Sex in the City life. And what I became very addicted to in that time period was telling the story of like, but you don't understand. First, my best friend passed. Then I lost my job. Then I lost my marriage. Then, and going on and on and on.
Yeah.
And it kind of kept me in it was almost like addiction to scratching that itch of telling how bad it was. And there's a shamanic saying of the more that we lick our own wounds, we start to like the taste of it. And I think that that's
Mhm.
one of the biggest things. And that is like, yes, we can acknowledge and honor the trauma we've gone through, but where can we start to, everything you're saying, start to express gratitude for the now? And that I made it through that. I survived that. What are the small glimmers that I can express gratitude for in the now? And even if it's the strength of our past self, that it's like, I'm still standing through all of that. That's
Yeah.
pretty badass.
Yeah.
So that's what I always kind of try to gently call out my clients. And I always say, like, I've been there. I was the queen of addiction to that story. Like, it was the first thing people, I would talk about when I was in that. And it's a small part of my book, but it's like probably like a few chapters versus the healing that came thereafter and all
Yeah.
of the lessons that unfolded as a result. And I have such gratitude that it happened too, because it happened to put me back on course. But yeah, I would say in terms of people that are in that, if it's, for example, if it's in our day-to-day life and we feel like they're not receiving anything, I think boundarying, stepping back. I've had clients that I've had to boundary and say, like, I don't know that this is serving right now, because while this is still the energy, like, why don't you just sit with this and allow yourself to process and integrate? And then when changes occur, we can revisit this. But like, I don't feel good taking someone's money when I know the energy next week is going to be the same based on where they're at. So
Yeah.
I think that even in terms of clients, whether that's friends, clients, boundarying it can be healthy. And because sometimes people are not in the place to receive like the illumination and the love of like, it actually is getting better, and like pointing out like, no, it is improving and I can see it. Like, if they can't receive that, it's okay to step back and know that we're not able to be of service in that moment. But I think that, yeah, the biggest thing that I have seen is like the addiction to the stories of lack, the stories of failure. And it's like, words are very powerful. As someone who
Yeah.
practices witchcraft, words are spells, right? And it's like, it's why I always
Yeah.
pick my words of the year and make my sigil. So I think that it's okay to honor and acknowledge stories of loss and trauma, but not let them be the entire book. Let it be a chapter in the book that describes our journey and like the arc of how we heal and how we become stronger.
Wow, I love that. I I never even thought about it that way, that basically by constantly making that story all about you, and that, you don't ever leave, you're still reliving it over and over and over again, and what that would do even physically to
Mm-hmm.
physical health.
Yeah, and I think it's like we charge, because like I said, I am the biggest, like I am guilty of this. This is no judgment to anyone who's in this cycle, because I have been in this cycle, but like we charge it. Like, have you ever told a really bad story and you almost like go into character of like, it was this bad and this dark, and like you're like reliving it in your mind. And like when
Yeah.
you said what are you even doing to your body, it's like you're putting yourself back into that cellular place of that
Yeah.
experience. So I think it's funny because when I tell my story now, I'm kind of like, oh, and all the things that I lost all the money. Anyway, getting to the point, because it's kind of like I'm like, oh, I don't want to like have to recharge that. But
Right.
I think that there's a way to acknowledge with grace without having to move back into the darkness of that place. But yeah, I've been seeing a lot of that recently with like just like in general in the collective and clients. And I'm like, okay, where can we look at where we're, yeah, that shamanic saying of how much are we licking our own wounds, and do we actually like the taste of it, and where can we kind of allow ourselves to move forward and heal from the wound.
Yeah. And that's a hard, especially like if it's a friendship, because you can't, especially when somebody's in that mindset, it's very difficult to say, hey, I think you're being negative, because they're automatically going to be
Yeah.
on the defense, So I think sometimes you do, have to step back, and
Yeah,
it makes it hard
absolutely.
because you love your friends and you want to help them, but you can't, sometimes they're just not ready, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. And everyone has to move through that process at their own pace too, because
Yeah.
I think that, and that's why sometimes I think the most loving thing is can just like allow a little bit of, and it doesn't mean like ditch that person, you're not there for them, but just like
Right.
allow the space for them to kind of like move through and integrate that experience. Yeah.
Yeah. Because they need it for their own like journey.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. What else did I want to ask you? Oh, well, did I ask you? I didn't ask you about dreams, did I? Did I ask you about the dreams? I didn't. I can't believe I didn't ask you about dreams.
I feel like
Do
personally we have talked all the time, but yeah, like
yeah.
not on the podcast yet. Yes.
Okay, so I fully believe that the moon cycles affect the type of dreams we have and the information we get. Do like all these different star alignments and planets, does that affect like where we're receiving information and what we get?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that like and to your point with the moon cycle specifically, we had the most recent full moon was in Gemini, I think maybe like a little like a week and a half ago, and that felt so intense. And my dreams around that time were very intense. And Gemini is the planet of the twins. It's kind of like communication too, ruled by Mercury, of things that are like needing to come to the surface, needing to be discussed, needing to be hashed out, and things that I hadn't even like necessarily wanted to look at. It was some things with like exes I hadn't thought about, and I was like, oh, why is this coming up at this time? But came up around that full moon in Gemini,
Huh.
and really intense dreams. But yeah, like shortly thereafter. So I think it's very we feel it with like the planetary movements. We feel it with certain retrogrades. Definitely with intense full moons. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I know as I'm writing out my dreams, like I said, because I'm doing the stories, which is making me stay focused on doing it. So I'm looking for the pattern to see, but I'm gonna have to try to align that with, because I've got it with the moons and the different cycles, but I'm gonna have to try to align that with the different, like, what do you call it? Do you call it segments or
Well, usually just like planetary transits. It depends. And it depends too which ones, because Mercury obviously affects communication. So if there are things like that full moon in Gemini, and like as we're in the Mercury shadow period, it can be things around communication, blocked communication, or kind of illusionary communication. Depending what's going on with Neptune. Neptune is kind of the like the deep water and like illusions and dreams. So that can bring up some things that were more deeply under the surface. But yeah, I would say all of those things play a role. The things that I tend to for myself see the most around is like definitely full moons and like Neptune transits, when Neptune moves into a new position, or Neptune in Sagittarius, because I'm Sag, like certain, and like my Neptune is in Sagittarius in my chart. So yeah, certain transits affect more than others, but I think that that's, yeah, it's an interesting thing to look at when things are super intense, and then like what's going on.
yeah. I wonder, like, sometimes I think too that if we're not getting things, because I think I love synchronicity, and I believe that lots of things come to us throughout the day that are messages that we just don't even, pick up
Yeah.
on. And I think when we don't, that maybe we get all that information in dreams. And then I guess if people don't listen to the dreams, then I don't know what that, I think when you're not open to receiving this information, I think that's when you really do kind of fall off the wagon and have struggles more. I mean, everybody struggles, but I feel like if you don't have some kind of a way of understanding the things that are going on around you and the information that you're getting, I think that just makes everything so much harder.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that and I have referred people back to you. I think that if you don't understand your dreams, getting someone talented to help, like, because I've come to you for your sessions to look at some of mine where I'm like, this is really confusing. I know it's something, and sometimes it can be hard to for ourselves to decipher it too. So I think that looking at messages when they come through dreams, you're the perfect person to go to for that. Messages that come up in the day to day that can be like numerology, like spirit animals, and just kind of having a curiosity around it, even if we don't know what it means, like getting curious of like, that piques my attention. And it's like, it's, repetitive in some way. It keeps showing up, and diving into that can really help receive those messages and utilize them to help kind of move forward and help heal some things.
Yeah. Okay, that's really cool. All right, let's see. I think I asked you everything. I was going to throw in a fashion question.
Yeah.
Just because, I mean, I feel like that'd be a lost opportunity for me if I didn't, right?
I love
uh,
it.
so, okay. So here's my thing. I'm a busy mom of an autistic. I mean, he's grown, but he keeps me busy, and so I can't be running around in cute boots. I mean, I could, but and any kind of a top where it's going to have like a cutout and stuff. So I have to dress kind of like boring, right? So how do you dress in a way that keeps you looking fashionable and like, I don't know if important's the right word, but like that I care, because I've seen photos of
Yeah.
myself and I'm like, what am I wearing?
Oh my
you
gosh, no, you always let you so I from I mean, we've never met in person yet. I aspire to. I really want to do a ghost hunt with you guys. But I feel like you always look gorgeous, first of all. But I
Oh,
think it's a
thanks.
really good question. And I think it's kind of like what you feel good in. And this is something, it's the same advice because I've been interviewed when I was like in my fashion career, and like after working for other companies. I had my own lingerie line for a bit, and I've been asked this question from that side of my life. I've been asked this question as like a psychic tarot reader, and it's the same of like, if you could change one thing in your wardrobe, I'm like, start with your underwear drawer. This sounds crazy, but it's kind of the first thing we put on. And I'm sure you've had this when you're putting on a pair of underwear. They're like, even if they're just like, it's a cute print and the fit is flattering, you're like, oh, like I'm feeling like kind of cute. I'm feeling empowered
Yeah.
today, versus like the saggy granny panties that are at the back of the drawer. And you're like, this is when my laundry is all in the all in the laundry room. Everything's dirty. So I always say constantly go through your underwear drawer, get rid of the ones that make you feel overweight, unattractive, like blah, like you don't care, and constantly get cute ones, even if it's cute, comfy ones at like Target, continually to get ones that make you feel good in the fit and that make you feel attractive. So always start with your underwear. And then in terms of like outfit wise, I think like layering is so key, because I think if there are things that you can like layer and piece together, you can easily take something that's like a comfy go-to and like a cute blazer or a cute like comfortable sweater over top, like changes it up where you're like, oh, I want to feel like after my day, then I'm going to go out like for dinner, or I'm going to like just run this errand and I want to put something a little more fashionable on. Layers and the underwear drawer are like my secret to everything. Honestly, I don't have as many clothes as people would assume. Number one, I always wear black, but like people like, because I am still like such a fashionista, I have like a pretty like layering focused wardrobe, and I constantly resell things like on like Real and Poshmark, because if I don't use
Yeah.
it, I'm very like feng shui about like I want someone who is gonna experience joy, and I want to create space for more abundance. So I'm constantly like either donating things or reselling things. And it's, yeah, I would say layering and cute underwear would be my two answers.
Okay, I love that. That's doable.
Yes.
All right. Well, before we go, if you want to tell everybody where they can find you, and then like your website and like any events you have coming up.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much. So it's pretty easy. Everything is under Cardsy B. It's just CARDSYB.com is my website, and all social media. So Facebook, Instagram, TikTok at Cardsy B. On all of those platforms, Facebook Reels, TikTok, and Instagram, I do daily energy updates. So whatever your preferred social media platform is, at Cardsy B, and you'll see my tarot pull of the day and energy update for the day. In terms of upcoming events, I'm doing in the whole month of January. I'm the Wellness Witch in residency for the Algonquin Hotel in New York. So if you are in New York or planning to stay in New York, definitely come to the Algonquin, because you get, if you book a room through this program, it's the Hex in the City program with me, you get a reading, numerology for the year, kind of like my insider's guide to like Witch's Guide to New York, of like where to get your aura photographed, great crystal shops, great herbal shops. So that's all happening the whole month of January. And then you can still, through that time, book virtually with me as well. I still do one-on-one readings and sessions, and I do monthly one-on-one coaching programs as well.
Wow, that sounds really fun. I love that.
Yeah, I'm so excited. It's like one of my
Yeah.
favorite opportunities work-wise that has come through, and I'm like, I can't wait. So yep, gonna be there for
Yeah.
the whole month. So anyone in the New York area or that wants to like come and stay in New York, stay at the Algonquin and come get some sessions with me.
Oh my God. Okay. Well, thank you again so much
Thank
for
you.
coming on the
Thank
show.
you for watching this week's Haunted Hour podcast. All the information for Cardsy B is posted below in the show notes. And if you'd like to have your dream interpreted by me, my website is thedreamsinterpreter.com. And I will see you guys next time. Bye.